Thank you for having me today. My name is not important, but I am someone who serves in the court of King Solomon. And you might think that I'm an important person because of that, but actually my role is very small in the king's court. And recently, he has been on this journey to discover the purpose of our existence in this world. And he has done many things. He has spent lots of his money. He has sent out people to do this task. And recently, since I'm in his court, I overheard some of the developments of what he had found in his pursuit. He came into the room and he said, "Come together, I want to talk to you." And I stood in the back. I'm just supposed to do what I'm there to do. But he had his advisors around, and he said, "I want to make a test to find out if pleasure and enjoyment will give me satisfaction." He said this, he said, "I want to test it. I want to gather, I want to get together, and I want to put my mind to it to find out if it is the thing that fulfills us or if it is just vanity, if it is just chasing after the wind." So the first thing he talked about laughter and enjoyment. He had places where he went. He had shows that he attended. He had different things that he put together in order to just fill his life with joyful laughter. And after that test, he came in frustrated and he said, "This is madness. The pursuit of pleasure through laughter." In fact, the actual words he used were, "What use does it have?" He searched with his heart, with his mind, how to give his body to pleasure also through the enjoyment of good wine. Now, I don't know if your culture enjoys wine or not, but he put his heart and his mind to the test. And he had all kinds of the best wine that was available to him in order to find out if he had that as a consistent component into his life, that he would find satisfaction. He not only chose wine, but he also chose how he would use the great things that he had and purchased in his kingdom. He built these great houses, enormous houses, bigger than anybody else had in the nation of Israel. He also planted these large vineyards where there were exotic plants, exotic flowers, and trees that no one had ever seen. He did it all for his own enjoyment. Then he made these large stone pools of water, beautiful things to observe, where the water was just beautifully still and the sunlight reflected off of it. It was something to see. He had these built as well. For this period of weeks and months, he set his heart to make his kingdom the most beautiful sight that there was. Not only did he test himself with laughter and wine and what he could make for himself, he also tested himself in the area of sexual pleasure. Solomon, after some time, took concubines into his own house. He took more than one. He had kings from other nations make treaties and agreements with him, where part of the agreement was that he would take in one of their women. In fact, he had so many wives and concubines, no one could keep track, not even him. He tested himself in that area. He had herds and flocks, animals, all kinds of things unseen to us. He also had gathered together into one of his storehouses silver and gold, so much that it could last lifetimes for many people. He also had singers, men and women singers, the best that life could offer, with art and entertainment, all the delights, all the food, all the service. It was all there for him. He became so great that he surpassed everyone that was before him in Israel. He had his wisdom that God had given him, and nothing did he withhold from himself that his eyes desired. No pleasure was kept from his heart. He found pleasure wherever he could. Then he looked and came into the room and examined everything he had done during this test. And he said it was all chasing after the wind. It was all vanity. It was all purposeless. Anything that he did, he said, it was no profit for me to do this under the sun. We thought that was the end of his test. In fact, it wasn't. It was just the beginning. The next day, he turned to how he could find fulfillment in wisdom and knowledge. He saw that wisdom was better than folly, right? To make a wise choice is better than making a foolish choice. So let me put my heart and mind to find that all the wisdom I can in the world and all the knowledge that there is, so that I can find fulfillment. Yet he perceived that the same fate falls on those who are wise and those who are foolish. All of them end up in the grave. What happens to the fool, he said, happens to me as well. Why would I try to be so wise? Why would I try to gain so much knowledge if in the end we both end up in the grave? There's no one also that will remember me in 50 or 100 years. They won't remember the fool, and they won't remember the king, he said. In his face, it was the look of disgust and hatred toward the conclusion of this test. It grieved King Solomon so much that he was depressed. In fact, in the next several meetings, I noticed he hated the things that he was doing. He hated the works of his hands. He hated the fact that he had to work every day under the sun, which rose and which set and which came back again. He said, if I have all this stuff that I have done and built, and I pass it on to someone who is not wise but is a fool, what will be the profit of that? So he despaired of life and all the labors under the sun. He tried to find the scholars of the age to increase his knowledge and wisdom, and any skill that he was missing, he sought to learn that skill, but it did only lead to his same conclusion that it was vanity. He said, "What do mortals gain if they strain and toil under the sun? For all their days are full of pain, exertion, and vexation of spirit. Even at night, his mind could not rest and be at peace." Then one day, he came in kind of in a different mood, in a different spirit. And he said, "There's nothing better than to eat and drink and find enjoyment in your work, because this is from the hand of God," he said. "For apart from God," he said, "who can eat and who can be in a place of enjoyment? For to the one who pleases God, God gives wisdom and knowledge and joy," the very things he was looking for. But to the sinner, to the one who rejects God, he gives the work of gathering and heaping into piles, only to give to the one who pleases God. But he did say this at the end: "Even that seems like chasing after the wind." It was such a puzzling time, such a fascinating but yet eerie time to see the king like this. But I could only gather from his study that there's some things that the world wants to offer us that cannot replace your satisfaction in God. So that's why we have Ecclesiastes chapter 2. The world offers you things that cannot replace satisfaction in God. There's a few. The first one is this: fulfillment in pleasure and possessions. Fulfillment in pleasure and possessions. I thought about making a joke last week. I thought about saying, you know what, there's nothing new under the sun. And then I thought, well, Solomon didn't have a smartphone. He didn't have the internet, right? And I thought, someone said this was very interesting. They said, the interesting thing about smartphones, everything that has come before us in life without the smartphone, nothing has changed except for the fact that now it's all in your smartphone. And that's not necessarily a good thing. That's not necessarily a bad thing. But when you think about, what did people enjoy 50 to 100 years ago? Well, they sat around and they told stories and they visited each other and they brought some meals to each other. They had times together. They went and watched the theater. They did things in nature. They went on trips and hikes. And you can do all that still, or you can just watch it on your phone. You get community. You talk to people through the phone. You text them. You call them. We used to call them. Nobody answers voicemail anymore. Used to be able to send, right? You could send letters with stamps on them. It's voicemail. You can buy things. That's not new. We've just made it to where it's in one place. Nothing is really new. In fact, it's so compacted into one thing that it brings about sometimes isolation and disconnectedness. Amen? But that's not the point. The point is that Solomon, and you're no stranger to the culture's appeal and offer to us to have enjoyment in pleasure and in possessions. I think one of the main things that we should get out of this is, do we trust God or do we not? Do we trust that God has told us this ahead of time through Solomon by the Holy Spirit or not? Do we need to find out ourselves if pleasure will come from owning so many great things in life? Or do we trust Him that He took this test and He found out it failed? Do we trust Him that we don't need to be with someone outside of our spouse? Do we trust Him that the lure of porn is no good, and lust and fulfilling pleasures and drinking too much and taking drugs? Do we trust Him that He tried this and He wanted to write it down so that we would believe it ahead of time or not? Do we have to have it all and then find out like Tom Brady did when he won the Super Bowl and he said, is this all there is? Or do we got to do it first? Do we listen? Or do we have to go and find out? He had everything. He tested himself in like entertainment. Where's our movie people? Binge people, sorry. We used to watch movies. You ever watched 10 episodes in a row? Anybody? Oh, jeez. What about 15? 15? 20? How many hours is someone binge watched max in this building? How many? 18? Oh, don't ask. Okay. Anybody done 18 though? Okay. 18 of 30 minutes? That's like 36 shows. And it's great. Like, you should enjoy a show and shows because it's telling you stories. It's using the best technology we have to communicate them. They had the best back then. He's just saying that he wanted to see if that was fulfilling. He tried wine, which should be just any kind of physical, whether it's eating or drinking type of enjoyment that you can get, right? The first time you go to like Fogo de Chao, it's one of the best times, right? And the second time it's kind of as good, but then it's kind of like tapers off, right? The waiter didn't wipe the crumbs off your face. He had all that every day, every meal. Can you imagine? Everything was done for him. He had servants. He had many, many wives, tested himself with that. In the end, if you were to read not Ecclesiastes, but other books in the Bible about Solomon, you find that because he took so many foreign wives that they turned his heart toward the foreign idols. He tested himself with the beauty of his kingdom, all the things that they could, the landscaping. Where's our landscapers? Anybody ever request something for you and you're like, why do they want that? It's like vanity. All the time. I want this flower 7 inches from the wall, and I want it to face 30 degrees toward the sun because I want it to grow right up to the middle. And it's like, he did all of that. He found out it was like trying to grasp smoke, right? Smoke is just some, who likes smoke? No, don't answer that. Who hates secondhand smoke? Come on now. Yes. Hate that stuff. It ain't just cigarettes now, right? be going 60 on the highway, and we're like, how did I smell that at this speed? Some kid flying by. No, the kids don't do it. He tried it all. He tried it all. It failed. Possessions, pleasure, failed. Then he went to the second one, which is gaining knowledge, essentially gaining knowledge without knowing God, without having God as the purpose of that knowledge. And that's the second part, where he sought to figure out, because he had wisdom and because he was the wisest man in all the earth at the time, that he thought, I see how making the right choices in the right situations is the right thing. And that's good, and it feels good, and it's a blessing. But if that's what I pursue only and without God, then I'm in trouble. Because he knew the folly. He was the one that wrote Proverbs. He was the one that wrote, if a wise man does this, it's great, and then if the fool does this, it's folly. Contrasting decisions. He wrote all that. He knew all that. That was his experience as well. He thought, I will just increase that to no end, and then I will see that my life is satisfied. And it wasn't true. Now, here's the third point. I'm going to go a little longer on this one. He sought satisfaction in his achievements or the fruit of his work. This is him kind of being the workaholic, finding his identity in his job, in his career, in his work. Verse 18, it says, I hated all the toil in which I had toiled under the sun, for I will leave it to the man who comes after me. He knew that the endurance of all the hard work that he would do could be put into the wrong hands and destroyed. In fact, that's kind of what happened to him when his two sons took over. The whole kingdom was split down the middle. He turned and gave his heart to despair because he couldn't find any enjoyment in work and toiling. He says, you toil with wisdom and knowledge and skill, verse 21, yet the fruit you leave for someone else to enjoy. Anybody been there and done that one? You did all the work, and the boss gets all the credit. Come on now, nobody? I remember being in a meeting, and this guy gave this huge presentation, and I thought, he didn't even do that. The person next to him did it. There's no way he did that. And then later I heard, you know that presentation? Like, I did it. I was like, whew. You didn't get the credit. You did all the work. He walked in the fruit of that. And everybody thought he was amazing. Didn't even think of you. Isn't that something to say, what purpose is that? Why did I do this project? And he took the credit. That's what Solomon's wrestling with here. Then he thought about life and all the work that you do. And he thought, it's a lot of pain and vexation of spirit. I know we don't use that word too much anymore, but I know some people in this room know what it means to be vexed, right? That's when your kids aren't listening and you told them about 16 times to put their seatbelt on, and then you thought they put it on and you drove like an hour and you look back and it's not on and you're vexed. It's like you don't even know how to feel and what to say. And your spirit is just torn all kinds of ways. While we're here on earth, we get a lot of pain, right? Who knows pain? 3 people? Y'all are on ibuprofen every day? Come on now. Emotional pain, physical pain, spiritual struggles. You thought this was going to go well. You thought you were going to have an awesome vacation. You get a flat tire. You thought this was going to be this way, and it didn't turn out that way. Flight was canceled. You had to sleep at the airport. Someone promised you they were going to give something to you, and they didn't. Broke your leg. Broken arm. All kinds of pain while we go through this life. And Solomon's like, man, how can we escape that? Then he thought about all the enjoyment. And he thought about it in light of God. It's towards the end of the chapter. Gifts in life should not be the point of satisfaction, but should point to the giver of the gift. Gifts in life should not be the point of satisfaction, but should point to the giver. He figured this out. Once again, he's using wisdom and discernment, which he must. There's nothing better for mortals or humans than to eat and drink and find enjoyment in their work. Verse 24, this is also from the hand of God. Look at the next verse. For to the one who pleases God, God gives him wisdom and knowledge and joy. Weren't these the things he was seeking? He was seeking to have all the wisdom. He was seeking to have all the knowledge. He was seeking pleasure and joy. But he says this, if you go ahead and put pleasing God at the top, God will give you wisdom. God will give you joy. God will give you knowledge. But to the sinner, to the one who does not pursue God, all that they work for will be given to someone who pleases God. I remember writing an email to a professor, and he was a scholar, but he wasn't like super well known, but he was well known in a certain area of theology, and there was like a project we had to do, and we had to like reach out and email these professors. And I picked my topic, and I'm studying it, and I find, well, who's the top author / professor in this field? I found his name, and I looked him up. You know, sometimes you can find their email, and I found his email, and I looked a little bit about him. And like I was reading about him, and said he had 23 PhDs. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, well, let me email him. Start typing the email. I'm doing this project. You wrote on this topic extensively. And then I had a question. I wonder if you could address this component of your theological perspective. Never got an email back. All right. I had the right address. Yeah. But I thought, how did he do 23 PhDs? Who cares about the email? How did he do 23 PhDs? Isn't that what Solomon was doing? And he gets all those PhDs, right, over time, whatever it was, however many years it took. And then he gets Alzheimer's. Say, you can't remember any of it. Or I remember meeting this guy, and he, if you study the Word and you preach, and you usually have a lot of books, a lot of commentaries, a lot of theological books, different things. I remember I met this guy. He had books forever. All the books that I could never buy, all the books that I could never, skip eating food and buy. He had them all. And he was moving to a different state. And he said, if anybody really wants these books, they could come in and fill up whatever container they get and take whatever books they want. Of course, I came with 12 boxes. And I had to ask him. I said, sir, you read all these? Yes, he read them all. That was the first shock. The second one was, I asked him this, how do you remember it? He said, this is what I did. For each book, I wrote a little summary on a note card, like a half sheet. I wrote down all the main points. And I don't know if he stored it in his computer or whatnot. But I thought, oh my goodness, the level of reading that this guy went through. And now he's just giving away the books. Hopefully, the people he gave the books to, that was one of the things he said, if you take the books, that you are agreeing to using these for what they are intended for. Not to go sell them, not to just, they hold open my door in the basement. That you're going to actually probably reference and look at these books. So I didn't take as many, because I'm like, how am I going to read all this? I took some important ones. Now I want to close with this. And the worship team comes up, that's good. This chapter is puzzling, right? It seems puzzling because Solomon does his little experiment. And then he says it's all a waste of time. But then at the end, he sort of says, if you seek God, God will give you these types of things, perhaps in some measure, more than others to other people, whatever. But then at the end, he kind of says, but it seems like it's all chasing after the wind. It's like he's double-minded. And you have to understand that the book itself is trying to take you on a journey, which one sermon at a time cannot necessarily do justice to. You have to get to the end of the book. But I read this quote, and here's what I thought, just to share, I thought it was the best quote. Since all worldly pursuits are futile, find enjoyment in God's daily gifts of food, drink, work, and joy. That's what this chapter is about. Don't wait till you get to the top and be like, I made it. Where's my joy? No. That's what he's saying, don't do. He's saying, go to work, come home, eat, enjoy your family every day. This is a gift of God. You don't have to look forward to it at the end of your life when you retire, you get it now. It's not something you get when you have everything. It should be now. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this chapter. God, we ask that you would just help us. We take for granted the things that you've given us every day, little things, little gifts, times we go out to eat, our family, church building, climate-controlled building, our vehicles, our jobs, our health. We ask that we would be grateful to you today, that we wouldn't think that in the distant or near future there's this mountaintop of unloading of joy onto us that'll come from getting all the pleasures in the world, or all the toil that we could put in, or all the things we could experience. Let us take heed in our hearts that the ultimate mountaintop is being in the presence of Jesus Christ when he comes back. In Jesus' name, amen.